Welcome to Pain to Power. I am Maria Cosme, also known as Brown Girl Interrupting, and it is great to have you all here with us today in watching Pain to Power, which is brought to you in association with the I Rant Network. And today I have a great guest, which I am really excited to introduce to you in just a few moments. But before I get into that, I've been thinking about this idea of vulnerability. And I actually used to reference it a lot in season one, if you follow and you've been watching those shows. But particularly, there is an author, Brene Brown, who talks about vulnerability quite a bit. And it's come to mind a lot more lately because, as some of you know, I am a mother of three boys. They're all grown. And vulnerability is already a very complex thing for us to engage in and be willing to have in just humanity. But when we add the layer of being men, what I'm learning is that that's so much more complex to show that vulnerability. So as I'm thinking about it, I was thinking about something that Brene Brown says, which is that vulnerability and the strength that comes from vulnerability is actually our most accurate way to measure courage. And there are three elements that come into being able to even be vulnerable, which is one, being okay with uncertainty, being willing to take the risk, and being open to emotional exposure. And again, it's coming up for me because I've been thinking about this with having my three boys and just men in general and people in general, and the importance of vulnerability in this healing journey. So, as we continue to heal together in community, as you join me in this journey of pain to power, and we listen to my guest today, I hope you continue to lean into that vulnerability and be willing to take those risks, be willing to be, in that uncertainty, and to continue to be emotionally exposed if it's going to help you to grow and heal and help others along the way. And so I want to welcome right now my guest, Devon Beck. Welcome, Devon, who is a facilitator of diversity, equity, and inclusion in Talbot County, as well as he is a motivational speaker and the co-founder of Play in Color. So welcome, Devon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's really awesome to have you here today. I ran into you very happenstance, but it's been a really cool, connection that we've built through the Bond Academy, which was where you spoke about your own story of pain
Yes.
to power in relation to being a Black male educator. So we're going to get into all of this today, which I'm very excited about. But I kind of always, the show is called Pain to Power.
Mhm.
And I feel like that journey is such a very personal one for everyone and how they frame it. So when you think about the idea of just taking pain and turning it into power, what has that meant for you?
Absolutely. I think of a multitude of things. I think about the first thing that pops up is death, grief. How grief or death will change everything for you, right? Especially like a major death, and the loss of my mom was one of those things where I really had to. Uh, Figure life out all over again after losing the most important person in your life. And it's coming up on 10 years, July 1st. So that'll be 10 years without her.
My condolences for your
Yes.
loss.
And I appreciate that. Another one is just the uncertainty and the insecurity that comes with not being particularly good at something. And sometimes we feel like when we're not good at something that's the end all be all, and it's the mistakes that really make the difference. Like, you really learn through your mistakes. If we were just good at everything and everything was already laid out for us, where is the fun in that? So it's kind of like so how do you learn through that and those insecurities that you have? And so that's been a big part of how I've moved forward, just dealing with insecurities and, especially like my story, how I came up. I don't think my story is kind of any different than any other kid's story. Like, I'm pretty sure a lot of kids have the same story. It's just I've been blessed with the gift to be able to verbalize it in a way where I could help others.
Mm. And that's powerful, I think, because like what you said, I think that learning from mistakes is, it sounds like you've learned from them, but now you're teaching others through that, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I love that you brought that connection in because I was just thinking we were both actually yesterday at a seminar, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
that was
Absolutely.
Loretta Hammond, the author of Culture Responsive Teaching in the Brain, and she spoke about this idea of the power of mistakes being really our learning points, and
Mhm.
growing points, and it connects back to this idea of vulnerability, all of it, right? So I appreciate that, all these connections. So um, tell me a little bit about, because you just mentioned it, your story is similar to many others, but it is your story. So what is your story? You grew up on the Eastern Shore. Tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up on the Eastern Shore of Maryland.
Well, the Eastern Shore of Maryland, it's different. It's different as far as there's a lot of racism everywhere in our country, but personal, local, immediate. This is what I knew growing up, and as a young black male coming up in this school system, like you don't really realize what racism is at that point
Mm,
because it's like there's certain things that are said and there was a lot of microaggressions that I didn't understand then, right? And so going through all of school, you're kind of taught to assimilate to a lot of things in order to be successful, right? And if you don't fit that standard, that means there's no way you could be successful if you don't fit that standard.
mm,
And as a young man, I fit all of those categories because I never wanted to make people uncomfortable. I never wanted people to be mad with me. I wanted to blend in. I wanted to, be a part of that. I wanted to just everybody loves Devon, right? The
mm,
ultimate people pleaser. And to an extent, I'm still I'm still Devon, but I have knowledge of self. I went to a HBCU. I've learned a lot about my history and microaggressions and everything. And I've learned to use my voice to speak out opposed to just going along to get along because that's the way everything has always been. And so
mm,
the Eastern Shore will always be home to me, but I think I've been challenging people within our community saying, okay, we know that it's always been this way, but now that we are calling out what the wrongs are, let's right these wrongs. And if this is what we're gonna do, well, you're gonna have somebody that's always gonna be pushing against that. And
mm,
there's no fear. I don't have any fear with the way that I speak out and the manner that I speak out. But it's also one of those things where um, I'm looking around. I'm like, if not me, then who?
mm.
So if I'm the one that has to be the voice, the one that has to stand on the platform to do it, and so be it. But I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and I'm letting the ancestors lead the way. And so I'm just putting one foot in front of the other every single day.
But with a lot of inspiration and power behind you, which it sounds like. But you've had some experiences. So you
Yeah,
said you have a knowledge of self now, and it came
yeah.
from going to HBCU. But tell me a little bit more, like in detail, of some of the things that led you to even desire that knowledge of self. I think knowledge of self is one of those things that we almost search for to some degree because of a lack of it for a
Mhm.
while. What was that experience when you didn't have that? And what were some of those things that impacted that in school for you?
The one story that stands out the most, and kind of even the way we met, because I think somebody heard my story and was like, I think you guys need to connect here. And so just going back to 97, I was the freshest kid in class. Let's be clear. But I had a I had a lot of difficulty in math. Had a lot of difficulty in math. And so I did okay in all of my other subjects. I wasn't blowing anybody away with my educational ability. I'll be clear on that. But I wasn't the worst student. But when I got to geometry in 1997. I was in 10th grade and I was in the class with ninth graders. And so that felt weird to me. I was the class president. I was the captain of the basketball team. I was on the homecoming court. So I was a popular kid. But I had like this deep, dark secret that I was kind of really, really bad at math. And so back in the day, we used to get participation points. So I would always raise my hand and try to answer as many questions as I could, even if I was wrong, just because I wanted to make sure that the teachers knew that I was participating. On this particular day, I'll never forget because I had Kimmy sitting in front of me. She called me a pumpkin because my sweater was orange. And I'm giving you all these little small details because I want you to know the impact of what that feels like.
Mm.
I had on my Levi 501 jeans and I had my beef and broccoli chuckers on. So I still remember the outfit. And so I would raise my hand and I would answer this question. And my geometry teacher would laugh at me because I got it wrong. And he would say, "You're just dumb." And the entire class laughed. And so from that point, what it did was it kind of, that was a cut. That was a very, that was a deep cut because I already felt like I was dumb in math. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I was already having that feeling about myself. And so to have a teacher stand in front of my peers and say directly to me that you're dumb, that just kind of, that took everything that I was thinking and it was like confirmation for me.
Mm.
So for the rest of my time in high school, though, I mean, I was still confident I did whatever, but I wouldn't raise my hand. I wouldn't answer any questions in math. I would just quietly get my D or my C minus, or, I would just do whatever I could do in order to get by. But the part of the story that changes it is that though that happened to me, my mom, Karen Beck, God rest her soul, she would always instill in me how great I was, right? Despite of whatever happened to me, she would always tell me like, "You're great. She would say, "Are you trying your absolute hardest?" And I'm like, "Mom, I'm telling you, I'm trying my hardest. I just can't get it." And she said, "Well, I'll accept whatever grade you bring to me." She didn't berate me because I didn't bring home the best grade in math. She would just try to make sure I was doing my absolute best. And that's what gave me the confidence. I would graduate. I did my graduation speech because I was the senior class president. I never really spoke on it. It never really came up again. I didn't say anything about that incident, but it had affected me to where I just had no confidence in math.
Mm.
I would walk on the campus of University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And there was a professor. She taught Math 109. It was Miss Harmon. And I walked in and I was a kid that had no confidence. I'm dumb in math, right? Because the teacher in 10th grade told me that I was dumb in math. So I'm going to just come in here and try to do the bare minimum to just get by because that's what I was used to doing. And, I was kind of very upfront with her, like, "Look, this ain't my subject. I'm majoring in English / communications to get away from this because, I'm not good at math."
Right, right.
She looked at me and she said, "I want you to come to my office hours every Tuesday and Thursday, and we will go over the material that I teach." And slowly but surely, things started clicking for me. And I'm understanding the material and I'm getting it. And I remember one day we're sitting in her office and I had just got like an A on a test that she gave or whatever. And I'm like, "Don't give me, I'm like, "You're just giving me the grade." She's like, "No. Sometimes people will make you think that you're dumb, but it's not the way you learn, it's the way you
Mm.
taught."
Oh my God. What an enlightenment for a student to hear that, right? It's not the
And
way you learn, it's how you've been taught.
it's how you've been taught. And so for me, hearing that statement was transformative because now I no longer ran from the subject. I just understood that I learned differently. And I always say to anybody who's in special education or anything, it like nobody is like not capable of doing anything. It's somebody who hasn't reached you just yet.
Mm.
And so from there, I graduated and all of that, and I got really, really good at math. And August 22nd, 2013, I taught my first geometry class.
That's full circle.
Full circle.
I love
And,
it.
and so, 20 some years later, I told this
Yeah.
story at my high school, and I got a lot of backlash because they were like, well, why are you saying this 20 years later? Why are you? I'm like, you don't get to tell people
Mm.
how to deal with their trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And what you don't always bank on, and what I always give to educators that I talk to about this is when you're talking to that kid and you're telling this kid or bringing this kid down, you have no clue who that kid is going to turn out to be.
Mm. Mm.
And so you have a choice of how you're going to show up in that kid's story. You can either be Mr. Oberdick or you could be Miss Harmon.
Mm.
And so I kind of give I always give them that choice. Like, who are you going to be in the story? Because I hope he's doing well. I hope, you know what I mean? I don't wish any bad on him, but my story is my story and my platform is my platform. And so,
Well, and I think what you elevate is it's not about the intent, it's the impact. It's
absolutely.
the impact. It's entirely the impact that it had on you. And you elevated so many deep, important things that I think I want to kind of bring out in what you heard, what I heard you say. Like, I mean, I think just even the fact of what it sounds like is that adults made the decision to either build or break you, whether intentionally. That's exactly what happened, right? And the difference in what happens when that comes through in the building versus the breaking. But also you talked about this idea of the fear, like that what's internalized by individuals, and we're talking as educators, both of us, and a lot of people that are going to watch us, or that are watching right now, are educators themselves. However, this is universal, right? The universal way that we engage with each other can either make us fearful of something that we think we now can't do or aren't capable of. Mm-hmm. And then we internalize that belief. Like, you really started to believe that there was something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right. I was recently actually at a conference, and I love it because they said everybody's a mather. But I get where you're coming from also, because I was also not good at math. I was very good at English language arts. Like, I'm a writer, all of that was easy, but like math was always really difficult for me. And that belief system of saying, well, I'm not good at math can really impact you as you get to be an adult, right? Because now you have to do your taxes, and you have to, you have to figure out your mortgage and your finances, and like, and that fear can impact how you engage in life. And you elevated the emotional tax, though, that it definitely took on you. And the fact that, again, I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing this. You went back to your school. So tell me a little bit about more of like, how did that feel for you? Because you said what they felt. How did you feel?
Now, I gave you the negative part, but I did have a lot of people saying thank you for sharing, because it needs to be said. And the tragic part about all of that is I'm just one of those kids. How many other kids did that happen to who didn't have a Karen Beck in the home saying, but you're not dumb, you can do this, right? And so, I mean, I think I was probably asked to do that because I may have been a safe choice, because if you look at the grand scheme of, I was homecoming king, I was class president, I was drum major, I was captain of the basketball team, captain of the cross, like, Devon's story looks as if he didn't have any blemishes on it, right? Like, there's no way, because
they thought, like, they did not know any of this. You kind of came in and dropped a bomb a little bit, because they didn't know this, or did they know
I never spoke on it. Never ever spoke on it. And the thing is, what I always want to provide to a space is, we get mixed up in this social media world where everything is perfect, right? You only show your highlights. Now, I'm not one that if I'm having a bad week, I'm going to get on social media and say I'm having a bad week. I don't do that. But I need people to know that there's an opportunity for you to climb no matter what happens. It's a bad moment, not a bad life. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And so I I'm a deep overthinker. And so, all of those things, I'm pretty sure there's another kid somewhere or somebody who's gonna hear my story that says, wait a minute, that happened to me too. And
Mhm.
even at when I was at Bowie State University, I had people stopping me saying, well, this happened to me in fourth grade, and this happened to me in
Mm.
sixth grade, and this happened to me in eighth grade. And so just that connection where I'm not the only one. And you think about how many students that people will come in contact with. My biggest thing at TCPS is I want every student to leave our system with the belief that they're learners. Like I'm
Mhm.
constantly learning. I can achieve anything. And so I always say the kid with the 4.0, great. But the kid that barely made it to graduation, I'm proud of you too, because school might not be your thing. You may flourish somewhere else. You know what I mean? And I don't define people by that at all.
Right. Well, and I think it goes back to what you said is that it's not necessarily how you learn, it's how you've been taught. And
Absolutely.
how much of our students who are struggling, it's how they've been taught that
Yep.
has not given them the opportunity that they needed to see themselves in the light that they could see themselves in and the impact that has. Um, and I appreciate you kind of lifting up all of this, like, and going through your story. But so as you became an educator, so now you're
Yeah.
teaching math, teaching geometry.
Yeah.
What was that like? Trying like going
Um,
back and now you're like
Now,
you're in a different role and you have this different opportunity. How did you utilize that?
no, there was still those what I would call a saboteur, in the life coaching language, but still on that shoulder of mine, because that happened to me. I still deal with this every day, and even though I talk about it, I still deal with this every single day. Now, have I been to therapy? Have I tried to free myself of this? Yes, and I've accepted it, but it's always going to be a part of my story, right?
Mhm.
And so if I had a lesson and I did something wrong or what, you know what I mean? The first couple times, oh my gosh, I was so apologetic. Oh, we got to go back over this because I didn't do this right. But in doing that, I think I empowered the students so much because they were like, Mr. Beck isn't perfect, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
so it was one of those things where I would have students from, because I taught at a level 5 school, and a level 5 school was like, it was an RTC. So it was kids that have been kicked out of every school in Maryland. They ended up on the Eastern Shore at this residential treatment center.
All right.
And so I worked my way from a teacher's assistant to a behavioral specialist to a geometry teacher, right?
Nice.
And
Mm.
so I had an understanding of those children have been bounced around to multiple schools and multiple facilities or whatever. So when they got to my classroom, they came in with uh that same like, I don't know how to do this. And so what I wanted to do was build their capacity. You can learn anything. Don't be scared of it. And it got to a point where they're rushing to get to your class because they knew
Mm.
that Mr. Beck was going to build them up. And so I've always been a motivator. You know what I mean? And I may have, I can't, I mean, I don't have any awards for teaching or anything like that. So I don't know if I was a award-winning teacher,
I'm
but,
sure you've had some students come back and say how
but
you've impacted them, and
again,
there's your reward sometimes, right? That's the
I
award.
did though. It was like, I had kids that would come in and say, I was so scared of math. I was so scared of this, but you made
Mm.
me feel comfortable. And that was the biggest win for me. Just
Mm.
making kids feel like you could do it. And when it was time for them to be discharged and they were going off, I would always like just try to build them up as much as they can before they go back into sometimes the environment in which they came from. But I wanted all my kids to know, um, I believe in you. And you'd be surprised how many kids have never heard an
Mm.
adult say, I believe in you.
Mm.
And so I was big on teaching the child that showed up to sit in front of me and not everything that your jacket said, and their jacket was like all their charges, everything, the reason why they're in the facility. I didn't judge that. What I want to see is who comes in front of me, who comes and sits in front of me, and how can we grow together? Because me being a first year teacher, I needed to grow as well, but I went in with that mindset.
Mm. That mindset is so transformational as an adult. Having the mindset of knowing that what you're doing actually makes that kind of impact on students. And particularly, you're talking about RTC program, which it sounds like, these are, you I'm sure some of your students were individuals who have not heard, right? Not heard that people believed in them, not gotten opportunities, been judged, assumed, a lot of different things, right? To end up in these programs, a lot of times we see that's the story and the trajectory of our students. So
Absolutely.
to be that adult in their life is transformational and
Yeah.
really big. And I imagine a lot of this was started with the inspiration of Karen Beck, like you said.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your mom and like your relationship with your mom and what that
Yeah.
was
So,
like.
so my mom, and hold on one second. I got to do this. My mom, I keep my mom's picture right here. All right.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, like, it's been 10 years, like in July 1, right?
Yeah.
And so this woman here has just been, I mean, the genius of her, and just her love, her protection, the way she encapsulated me with love, and just, Devon, be sure about who you are. And even in those uncertain moments, like I have a tattoo of her I have this picture on my arm. Just so
Oh.
she's everywhere with me, just so, because like I said, I could tell her anything. And I feel like out of everybody in the world, she understood me
Mm.
the most. And I wake up and I put my feet on the ground every single day, and it's not about perfection. It's about honoring what she started for me.
Mm.
And so, in order to keep her legacy alive, I want to be that adult that I mean, obviously, I have daughters that I pour into, but I want to not just pour into them, but I want to pour into everybody that I came in contact with, so I can
Mm.
keep that love permeating, because she did so much for me, and I miss her every single day, every single day.
Mm. Well, it's a beautiful connection that you have though with your mom, right? And then the fact that you I mean, like you said, she inspired you to do so much more and spread even further than just you and your children, which is huge. So tell me about like what has inspired you. So you've three daughters.
Yes,
How old are your girls? What are their,
Taylor,
tell me a little bit about
Taylor's
them.
15, Taylor's 15, Skylar is 13, and Ryan is 4.
Ah,
Yes.
so you got the range. I know I have the range too. And, I have boys though. So tell me, as a girl dad,
The
right?
girl that my children are like, they're my saving grace as well, and I learn so much from them. And, like, if I don't impress another soul in the world, as long as, like, they treat me like a rock star every
Mm,
time I walk in a room, you know what I mean?
that's cool. At 15 and
Yeah,
13.
yeah. I mean, but they listen to all my speeches before they do it. They hear my speeches first. So I sit, if I write a speech, I read it to them first before anybody hears it. And they give me feedback. They give me all of that, like, they're great. And Taylor, Taylor is like, she, each of my children are me in different stages of my life, which is
Mm.
incredible. Like Taylor is me now, where I'm like kind of watching everybody. I kind of know the ways of the world. Skylar's the social butterfly that could talk to anybody. She's making best friends every day. I'm like, that's probably not your best friend, but they might be good friends. You'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out, right?
Yeah.
You know.
And
Yeah, yeah.
Ryan is the wild card. She's like the bossy one. She's in the back telling me go. The light's green, dad. Like, I'm like, okay. So they all serve their purpose. And Ryan, like this little face, she looks exactly like my mom. It's so incredible. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yep.
That's a nice way to stay connected.
Yep.
And that's beautiful. I love how you like just describe that, like they're all little different stages of you.
Yes.
And that's a very cool thing to see that, laid out with your children. And so you said that you actually give your speeches to them first.
Yeah, they hear them first every time.
I love it. So actually, let's go into that a little bit.
Okay.
With dadhood, and I think we're going to come back to this fatherhood piece with this. But
Okay.
so you were an educator,
Yes.
and then you change and kind of shift gears a little bit with adding this new element of becoming a speaker and actually going out there and sharing stories about your learnings with others. So tell me about this motivational speaking. How did you get there? Like what made you be like, okay, so now I got to go and talk to people about what I do, what I've learned.
I'm a hip hop artist still, and I keep trying to say I always say I am instead of saying I was.
Yes, I am, because it is who you are.
It is me, right?
Yeah.
And so years ago, I toured with Wale, Big Sean, Meek Mill. We did a black college tour. And so after that, I was on the cusp of getting a record deal with Atlantic Records, and I thought my life was going to be completely different than what it is now. I definitely thought I was going to be Jay-Z. And so, through that, I remember when the Atlantic Records deal didn't happen. I was kind of devastated. I felt like I was a failure. And I ran into like my mentor, Lorenzo Hughes, Dr. Lorenzo Hughes.
Right. I did meet him.
He came to my mother's funeral. My mom had passed away. He came to my mother's funeral. And I remember him saying, I got you. Right. And everybody, and, during a funeral, everybody says, I got you. I'm going to look out for you, whatever. Right. And so I said, thank you. And, that day is a blur, but I do remember that. And it's important that I remember that. So he reached out like a month later and said, let's go to lunch. We go to lunch and he's like, have you ever thought about telling your story? And I'm like, Dr. Hughes, nobody wants to hear about a failed rapper from Denton, Maryland. And he said one thing that kind of changed everything for me. He said, how many people from where you're from made it that far though? And I'm like, nobody has taken that path. And he's like, well, that's why your story is important. And it's not about failure. It's about you still pushing through that. And so he set it up where it was February 15th, 2014. You see how I remember these dates? Like, but
it's impressive. I'm very impressed with your memory. The vivid detail is on point.
I went on my first kind of motivational speaking tour to I went to the elementary school in Dorchester County. I went to the middle school and I went to the high school. And I did that all in one day. No, I went to two high schools. I went to North Dorchester High School. I went to Cambridge South Dorchester, and I went to Maces Lane Middle. In one day.
Your first time speaking.
My first time doing it, right?
Wow. Okay.
And so get this. I didn't write anything down. I just spoke. I just spoke from my heart. And that was the moment that changed my life, because from that, I had kids reaching out. I used to be a cutter. I used to, I was getting bullied. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's something here. And without Dr. Hughes saying, I believe in you enough to do this, I would not be sitting here right now without Dr. Hugh. And I every time I see him, I thank him. Every single time I see him, I thank him because uh, I always tell children, all you need is really one person to
Mhm.
believe in you. All you
So
need is one person to believe in you, and it changes your life. And throughout this, we've been sitting here. I've named at least three people that have in every phase of my life that have
mhm.
believed in me and given me the opportunity to. Uh, they don't do the work for me. They just say, "Hey, I see this in you."
Yeah. But seeing things in someone that they may not see for themselves is such a powerful thing, and to name it, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and I think, you're it started with your mom, right?
yeah,
And moms do that for us, right? We're,
yeah,
our moms, right? I'm a
yeah,
mom, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's what we do. But when that expands to, your college geometry teacher, right? When it expands to, Dr. Hughes, like, it's it's more and more opportunities, right? And
yeah.
I think that is so important to highlight in what you said, because when you are believed in, your ability to do things is so much greater, because you then see yourself in a different way, and it's clear you did, right? Like, to get up there, and I don't know how many people do motivational speaking. I don't know how often people know, but it is not easy. I mean, like, every time I get on the show, I get nervous, right? Like, I
Right.
mean, like, to get up in front of people and just speak, especially with no notes, with no plan, right? With no slides, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
just
yeah,
off the cuff, share a story, is multiple things, right? One, it's just like, it's scary, like, but it's
yeah,
vulnerable. And
yeah,
vulnerability, like, to take that first stab at vulnerability, like, I come back to what I said at the beginning of the show. Like, I think you did all those things. You were willing to take the uncertainty, the risk, and be emotionally exposed for the good of others.
yeah.
That's huge.
And it's your chart. And sometimes, and like I said, that purpose, like finding purpose,
Mm.
right? Um, Sometimes we can walk through this whole world and really not know why. And I had this conversation with Taylor. I'm like, certain things happen to you and you will not understand why.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, it'll start making sense. Because I would say, like, why do people treat me like that? I'm not a bad person. I always try to put out good energy, and why, but and now people are like, yeah, you got to watch him because he'll turn it into a whole.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, watch
Wait
what
till
you
you're in
say
the
to me. 'Cause,
speech.
yeah, I'll turn
Like,
you into a whole PD session. Don't play with me. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like I do see everything. Me being an overthinker and an overanalyzer and all of that, I've kind of used it to empower others, right?
mhm.
And so I do overthink everything and I do overanalyze everything, but that's a part of the gift too, because I've kind of turned that into you know, I want to give that to other people. And I want people to think about what they say to people before they say it. I want you to know I do a PD called The Power of Words. And that's what I did at Bowie. The
Mm.
power of words. How do words affect you? You may say something and just walk off and go on with the rest of your life, but how does that hold on to somebody else for the rest of my life? And I think about my geometry teacher that I still, when I walk into certain spaces, it's still there. Now I show up differently, but it's still there, and that happened years ago. So what's the power in that? And and you have people say, "Well, I don't care about what people say." Yeah, I know. It
It
sounds
stays
fly
in
to say
you.
in the moment, but you care about what people say to you about you and all of that. So
No,
you
it
know,
sticks with you. It does, right? And
yeah,
like you said, like, it goes back to, some people are going to build you and some people are breaking you, right? Like, there's so much of that. So in these speeches that you give,
uh-huh.
is there one in particular, or like, something that you can recall that's transformed you? Like, you didn't even realize it until you got up there and you spoke and you kind of felt it yourself, some change or some learning, something that was ignited.
I think everyone has been special and everyone has changed me in a way. Now, my most recent was um the commencement speech at Cambridge South Dorchester. Just the response from that has, I mean, the adults, I wrote it for the graduates, but the adults that have reached out and said that connected with me. And I'm like,
Mm.
wow, wow. And what I talked about was what defines you, right? It's like not where you're at with your title, how much money you have in your bank account. It's how you treat people when you have everything. It's also how you treat people when you have nothing and
Mm.
nothing is going your way. That's what really defines you, because those situations can change. They're interchangeable, right? One day you can have it all, one day you can have nothing. How
Yeah.
do you treat people when you have absolutely everything going your way? How do you treat people when you have absolutely nothing going your way? That's really what defines you, not what people can say about whatever it is you have like right now, because that's interchangeable. And so just people responding to that the way they did, like there was an outpour of people just saying, wow. And I was like, wow, well, I guess, but I like I said, every speech it's been just those conversations that I have with somebody who has connected with it, or
Mm-hmm.
they,
Mm-hmm.
I get tears, or, like, and I always think tears are important, and them being vulnerable with me because I was vulnerable with them. I just think I'm so grateful for the gift to be able to talk to people in that way and just to be able to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Because
I
what if I
mean, and
go through it? I'm like, I don't know that this is possible,
it's but that's awesome. That is awesome, right? That when you're just learning through life and then sharing with others through that your own learning, which is a powerful thing, because it's like you're constantly getting that, creativity, I imagine, because you're constantly learning, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so has this process also helped you in understanding yourself better? Like, are there things you've learned about yourself that maybe are things that are not things that you're necessarily happy or proud of, or things that are, that you didn't even realize about your strengths that you have?
I feel like when you're doing motivation or inspiration, it forces you to hold yourself accountable. I can't. I really stand on this. Like, I will not say or give out to anybody else anything I'm not willing to challenge myself with or try. I don't want it to be that way. I don't want to just write all these fancy words and get everybody like So it kind of forces me to really stand in what I believe and push that forward. And we all have those things that we could change, and we could, I don't think anybody's walking around here like, what, I'm dude perfect right now. I can, there's always things. But what a lot of people don't know, when I delivered the speech at CSD, I was probably at one of my lowest points. Who would know?
Mm.
Unless
Mm.
I told everybody. You understand what I'm saying? But
Right.
a big thing about that was I'm proving that no matter where you are, who can you be in
You can
those
still be
moments?
that person. Yeah. So,
And
I mean, that's the power of it, right? Is that what defines you, as you said, right? Is the ability to put, it seems like, others before yourself at some points, right? In
yeah,
those moments.
and still
Um,
recognizing that you need to take care of yourself, because people,
yeah. Yeah. That's really
everybody can
important.
pour from,
So,
you can't pour from an empty cup.
no, you can't. So, I mean, in that way, what are some of the things that you do then to feed yourself, to keep pouring into yourself in order to give to others? Because that is something that I don't think everybody understands, is that when you are motivating others, when you are, advising others and coaching others and growing others and showing up no matter what you feel in a positive light for other people, it is an emotional exhaustion,
Yeah.
and it takes a toll. So how do you feed your soul? How do you continue to keep yourself at a place where you're balanced enough to do that without feeling like you're breaking a little bit?
What's funny is when you ask that question, you're literally looking at the background of
I would say, I mean, that space seems so serene
yeah,
and
yeah,
like
but
beautiful light coming in. You got your brick wall
yeah.
there. Like,
And so what I've essentially created for myself is my own sanctuary within my home. Like I'm grabbing my, like, as I sit here and talk to you, like I got candles lit, you know what I mean? Like I just create this space where I got vinyl records back here, I'm creating these things for me to, I'm okay with alone time. And where a lot of people
mm,
aren't okay with alone time, they always feel like they have a need to be doing something. I'm not one of those people. I can sit with nothingness. I'm okay in the nothingness and just being with me. But that's how I recharge my battery. My job is to talk all day in every facet of
mhm.
what I do. I talk all day. And so those moments where I'm super quiet, oh, I appreciate it. I don't I told you before we started, like I play Call of Duty. Like just those moments where I can, and I read. Just something where I can just be with me. I eat by myself. I go to the movies by myself. I I cook.
Yeah,
Like all of
yeah.
this. I find it very, very important just to take time for Devon. And yes, I give
Mm.
so much of myself to everybody else and will continue to do so. But I also make sure I remember to pour into Devon because I have a lot of people depending on me. And if I have nothing left,
Mm.
I then know I have nothing to give them. So I have to make sure I recognize when it's time to pour into Devon.
I love the way that you described your sanctuary and what it does for you, right? And
Yeah.
that idea of recharging your battery as someone who is constantly talking and giving and sharing with others is so important. So tell me a little bit about your sanctuary itself. I mean, I see you've got some art up there and you've got your
Yeah.
guitar back there. So you talked about being a hip hop artist. Were you a guitarist as well?
Absolutely not. Somebody gave that to me. I gotta
that's
be honest.
that's a very
Shout out
misleading
my
prop,
cousin
but you
Kiana.
could you could have rolled with that one.
Yeah, yeah. No lying in me. There's no cap in my raps. No, she gave that to me, and I thought it was beautiful because it has like this blue velvet interior in the case. And I was like, she's like, "Do you want it?" I'm like, "Absolutely. I'll sit it back there. It's awesome."
Nice, nice. Very nice. Well, this has been such a great conversation, and I really appreciate everything that you've shared. And before we go, there's a couple more pieces. That you are also the co-founder of Play in Color. Tell me a little bit
Yes.
about that
Mhm.
and what that is for you. Where did
Yeah.
that start?
Shout out my brother Shelton Hawkins. We kind of had an idea to redo basketball courts probably 20 years ago. We were 21, 22 years old, and in my hometown of Denton, Maryland, like what we wanted to do was redo that court because it was kind of like our record court. Even though he's from Easton, I will not let him claim Denton, but I'm from Denton, and so we wanted to redo that court because it was fenced in. I mean, if you see it, it's just a beautiful space. And kind of the time at the time, like they were saying, well, people do drugs there, people sell drugs there, there's fighting and all that. And we have been trying to do community work for a year. So what we're able to do now, like we have been trying to do that since we were in our early 20s. And so pretty much the answer was no. And then fast forward a couple of years later, 2003, one of our good friends, his cousin James Thomas, died on Ottawa court. He died, he had a heart attack on the court or like heart complications on the court
Mm.
and died on that court and on Ottawa. And so nobody would play there for years. Like after that, it just had like this cloud around it and nobody would ever really play there. And so Shelton would continue to write letters to try to redo that court, and they just kept saying it was a bad idea. And then the now mayor, now she's just been elected mayor of Houston, Megan Cook. she came along and said that that was a great idea, and she would go on to, allow us to paint that court. And it has been, I mean, since then he's done LeBron James's court. He did 21 Savage. He's been to Jordan. He's done a Jordan court. He's been everywhere, traveling across the country. We have one coming up with Puma in July with Emory Jones, and it's been an amazing thing to see these communities be transformed. And from there, we've been able to travel the country. Shelton does most of the traveling, but been able to travel the country and just make all courts beautiful everywhere. And it's been an amazing thing to watch. So I'm thankful to be a part of it.
That's a beautiful story. And I love that you have, again, another way to give back, another way to build with the community and to use the creativity to do it, which is amazing. Yeah. And it sounds like you didn't let the barriers of that starting point impact you, and you kept going, which is huge. Thank you so much for all your time today, Devon. Like, I really appreciate all that you shared and all that you're doing. How can everyone reach you? Where do they go to get some motivational speaking engagement from you?
They can email me at devonbeck365@gmail.com if you're inquiring about speeches. On all social media, I have Devon Beck, DEVONBECK, on Facebook, Devon Beck 365, on Instagram and Twitter, and just Devon Beck on LinkedIn. So I'm around. So if anybody needs some motivation or inspiration, I promise you, it's unlike anything you've ever heard, or you may have heard it, but it's just I deliver it a little differently. And so I'm here, and I'm willing to. I feel like we can change the world by changing our little pockets. That's how we start.
Yeah, definitely. It's the narrative, it's the stories. I mean, that is the power of storytelling and the power of vulnerability, which you did such an amazing job of elevating here today and showing with sharing your story and sharing what you do in your craft. And so I will put all of those links down here so that you can go and check out Devon, find out all his information, have him come and speak at one of your engagements if you have something that you would like to get some motivation and definitely hear about how we continue to grow and learn with each other. So thank you again to everyone. Thank you to Devon. Thank you to Logic, my amazing producer, and to the iRant Network, to all of our iRant family who comes in and is in the chat and sharing. Thank you to you for joining us on Pain to Power. And please make sure you come and join me every Sunday on YouTube, on Brown Girl Interrupting, on the iRant Network, and on the Ranters Union for Pain to Power episodes as you continue to lean into your vulnerability, take those risks, be willing to be in uncertainty and that emotional exposure while we continue to grow and learn as a community in this journey of finding our power in our pain. Thanks again, Devon. Appreciate having you here this evening.
Thank you.
We regret more about the things we didn't do than the things we did do. Get out of yourself. Just do it. I'm the feeling of a fresh cut, room full of bummy dudes, and I'm dressed up. Stand up, stood out, why I'm so different. Nothing special, only utilizing what I'm given. I see the snakes need to brush up on my long division. Why multiply if we double in the wrong decisions? Tunnel vision was cool but needed a better view. The game changed when you start talking revenue. Who knew we wrote rhymes since the past time? The way it flies got me looking like a mastermind. I'm penning my latest masterpiece. First one in the studio, probably be the last to leave. Leaving all regrets in the rear view. Start doubting yourself just with the fear of you. Came from muddy waters, now I'm diving in the clear blue. Road to riches on lane, shifting the gear or two. What do it all really mean? Got a heart full of pride and a head full of steam. I'm an addict for the life, don't try to intervene. I'm living fast cause I'm chasing my dreams. What do it all really mean? Got a heart full of pride and a head full don't try to intervene. I'm living fast cause I'm chasing my dreams. It's 4 in the morning and I'm still working. Stock rose reminiscing when I felt worthless. Things act different cause they think I'm on. See the snakes in the grass easy on manicured lawns. Bare arms, post-born. I ain't a dope boy, I make dope songs. Writing Grammy speeches, kinda long-winded. For real, fuck everybody long as my mama in it. Either way, we front row, bow ties. Hard bottoms, beer long, no bean pies. Mindset like Malcolm, peeping through the blinds. By any means, throwing half of a peace sign. The world's mine. Chick told me that I'm money driven. Since it's the root of all evil, I pray for forgiveness. Chase billions, tell my people straight. Thousands by the hour, millions every day. What do it all really mean? Got a heart full of pride and a head full of steam. I'm an addict for the life, don't try to intervene. I'm living fast cause I'm chasing my dreams. What do it all really mean? Got a heart full of pride and a head full of steam. I'm an addict for the life, don't try to intervene. I'm living fast cause I'm chasing my dreams. I remember hitting rock bottom, tears in my eyes, not $1 in my wallet. Mask on, smiling, thinking about wilding. See, being broke can lead to violence. And even though I went to college, I graduated in college, had to figure out the powers and the knowledge. 2 years removed, still I'm undecided. Degrees on the wall to mama, I made a promise. And even though I'm rhyming, I'm about to get it honest. School of hard knocks, I graduated with honors. I find it ironic, I'm trying to be iconic while I'm on the path. I'm a fan of this shit, signing autographs. Starstruck, hopping out of a Porsche truck and have all the bread in the world but can't afford trust. When your stars align, that's what they call luck. This C-pop, I give it all up. Trust. What do it all really mean? Got a heart full of pride and a head full of steam. I'm an addict for the life, don't try to intervene. I'm living fast cause I'm chasing my dreams. What do it all really mean? Got a heart full of pride and a head full of steam. I'm an addict for the life, don't try to intervene. I'm living fast cause I'm chasing my dreams. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
My world has slowly crumbled around me countless times, and every time I rebuild with the pieces I've been given to birth something so transformational and beautiful that no one else knew might exist before it was shown to them. These moments tend to coincide within my romantic path. The universe has been telling me to focus on the revolution and not romance. It has over time given me the tools, resilience, and light to turn my pain into power. And only now do I see that the key to this always resided in the love and knowing I had in myself, not from the external sources of family or men. The message I have been avoiding might be that my time in this world I had existed in was not to receive love, but to put it out there for others to see, feel, and heal through. Revolution before romance moves pain into power.